Yeah, close your eyes for just a second and picture Paris. Not just the city of lights, romance, but Paris in the summer of 44. Try and imagine those really iconic images of liberation. The crowds cheering, tanks rolling down the Champs-Élysées, past the Arc de Triomphe, a city finally breathing free after what? 4 years of brutal occupation. So it's a powerful scene, isn't it? Something we all kind of carry in our minds.
It really is. Almost mythical.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really compelling for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because the liberation of Paris, while it was absolutely a moment of huge triumph, it actually involves some incredibly intense strategic debates and surprisingly a lot of political maneuvering and just a complex human experience that goes, way beyond the simple, powerful images. So our mission today is to unpack the crucial nuances of this pivotal moment in World War II. We're drawing from a fantastic article that details the events.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how the military objective, the sort of cold strategic calculations, they just collided head on with these deeply held political needs, symbolic needs too. And this clash, well, it fundamentally shaped one of the most iconic events of the war. Our goal is really to help you, our listener, understand not just what happened, but maybe more importantly, why it unfolded the way it did, to give you that, that aha moment of clarity about this incredible historical turning point.
And it really begins with a truly surprising initial plan. When the Allies launched their invasion of France, D-Day, June 6, 1944, the Supreme Allied Commander, General Eisenhower, his original strategy, completely bypassed Paris. Can you believe that? The capital of France just skirted around. Why?
Yeah.
Why would they even consider that?
It sounds completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? But from a purely military standpoint, Eisenhower and the Allied Command, well, they had very pragmatic reasons for wanting to avoid Paris. First, there was the huge risk of destruction. I mean, imagine the priceless historical sites, the cultural centers, the art, the architecture, potentially just reduced to rubble in a big urban battle.
Right, so they're trying to preserve it by staying away. But that created other problems later, didn't it?
Precisely. And secondly, getting bogged down in a massive city fight, that would significantly slow down the advance toward Germany. And that was their ultimate objective, right? Get to Germany. And finally, just think about the logistics. Securing and sustaining the civilian population of a city as massive as Paris would require immense resources. Food, water, medical supplies.
Resources they needed elsewhere.
Exactly, diverting them from the front line. So from a purely cold military calculation, liberating Paris offered no direct advantage. Its German garrison. They figured they could just isolate them, deal with them later.
Okay. But that purely military view, that logical calculation, stood in really stark contrast to how the French people themselves saw things.
Yeah.
For them, victory over Germany just wouldn't be complete until their capital was free. Until the collaborationist Vichy government, that's the French regime that worked with the Nazis, was replaced.
Absolutely. And that taste of imminent victory, with the Allies advancing closer and closer, it really fueled this growing, almost desperate unrest inside Paris.
Yeah, it really raises a fundamental question, doesn't it? How do you balance that cold calculus of military strategy with the powerful emotional, the symbolic weight of a capital city under occupation?
Mm-hmm. And the events on the ground, really driven by the French people themselves, they essentially forced Eisenhower's hand. It just demonstrates that war is rarely just about logistics and troop movements, the human factor.
It changes everything. So while Paris was technically being bypassed on the maps, inside the city itself, things were absolutely boiling over. This rising unrest became this powerful, undeniable catalyst. As the Allies pushed forward, Paris just became this hotbed of resistance. We saw widespread labor strikes.
Yeah, and increasingly bold attacks on Wehrmacht patrols, too, the German armed forces.
And then on August 14th, a full-blown rebellion led by communist resistance fighters just exploded.
And this wasn't just like isolated incidents either. The very next day, August 15th, the Paris police, the city's own law enforcement, they left their posts to join the rebellion. That was a critical turning point.
Wow.
Yeah, you suddenly had a city in open revolt. And that's when General Charles de Gaulle, the leader of the Free French, really enters the picture decisively. He arrived on the continent on August 20th and immediately grasped the urgency of it all.
De Gaulle warned Eisenhower, didn't he, that a determined German effort would surely crush the rebels. That could lead to a brutal crackdown, mass casualties. But it wasn't just about saving lives, was it? He had a deeper political game in mind.
Oh, absolutely. De Gaulle shrewdly argued that this ongoing insurrection, if the Allies didn't step in, was actually strengthening the French communists within the resistance movement. And that was a significant concern for the future political stability of France. He effectively presented Eisenhower with a dilemma: intervene and liberate Paris now, or risk a communist-dominated post-war France, which was certainly not what the Allies wanted.
Right. So,
So,
okay. This means the French resistance's bold actions, plus de Gaulle's political foresight, they
Mhm.
fundamentally shifted the Allied strategy. What was supposed to be a bypass turned into a direct advance. Given all those pressures, the rebellion, de Gaulle's specific demands, how did Eisenhower actually respond? What was the order?
Well, on August 22nd, Eisenhower ordered General Omar Bradley, who is commanding the 12th U.S. Army Group, to seize the city. Just take it. And this really underscores a key principle, doesn't it? Military commanders, no matter how clear their objectives might seem, they often have to adapt. Adapt to political realities, the will of the local population, even when it complicates their primary plans.
It really shows the power of that popular pressure and political persuasion, too, right in the middle of World War.
Definitely.
So with that huge decision made, Bradley assigns the mission to Major General Leonard T. Guiraud, the V Corps commander. And crucially, as promised to de Gaulle, free French forces would lead the way. Specifically, General Leclerc's French 2nd Armored Division. That must have been profoundly symbolic.
Hugely symbolic, and strategically important, too, for bolstering French morale, French authority.
Okay, so Leclerc heads in.
Yeah.
What about support?
Well, while Leclerc's forces were heading towards the city, Major General Raymond O. Barton's U.S. 4th Infantry Division was assigned a supporting role. Secure the Seine River crossing south of Paris, act as a reserve for Leclerc. Barton's division moved out on the night of August 23rd, apparently in a steady downpour, heading towards the city.
But Leclerc's advance,
Yeah.
it wasn't smooth sailing, was it? It quickly ran into trouble. This wasn't some, clean, heroic sweep we might imagine.
No, not at all. He actually ignored Gouraud's orders to enter the city from the west. He chose to attack from the south instead.
Why? Any idea?
It seems he wanted a more direct route, maybe more symbolic, but it meant he outran his artillery support. And crucially, he encountered the strongest part of the German defense line.
So what was that advance actually like for the troops on the ground? Must have been tough.
Oh, it was messy, chaotic, roadblocks, ambushes. They just chipped away at the French troops. By the evening of August 24th, Leclerc's formations had already suffered 300 casualties. They'd lost 35 tanks and over 100 other vehicles.
Wow. And how did the commanders react to that? Giraud and Bradley.
They were pretty irritated, apparently, by his, deviation from the plan and the slow progress. Bradley even ordered Barton, the American general, to basically bypass the French and try entering from the southeast. But despite all the difficulties, the slow progress, the casualties, word moved incredibly quickly through the population. People knew the French 2nd Armored Division had entered the city limits, and that news just spread this desperate, surging joy among the Parisians who'd suffered for so long.
What an intense mix of emotions right there. You've got this slow, costly, maybe even frustrating advance from the military perspective. And yet, the hope it ignited among the people was just palpable. And then there's this incredible twist with the German commander, General von Choltitz. He's potentially under direct orders from Hitler himself to just flatten Paris, destroy it. And he doesn't. What was behind that decision? Was it just pragmatism? Or was there something more personal, maybe even, dare I say, honorable in all that chaos?
That's such a critical question, isn't it? And it really humanizes the conflict in a surprising way. Choltitz, the commander of the German garrison, well, he had a respectable combat record. He wasn't incompetent. But he also understood the reality on the ground. His small force, maybe 20,000 men, they had absolutely no chance against 3 million angry French citizens, especially not with Allied forces now actually entering the city.
Right. The odds were impossible.
Impossible. And importantly, maybe crucially, Choltitz himself did not desire to see Paris reduced to rubble. Unlike Hitler's potential orders, or maybe even explicit ones, he knew reinforcements weren't coming. He could do little more than just hope. So his decision not to destroy Paris, whether defying explicit or just implicit commands, it underscores those individual choices that get made even within a brutal war. And in this case, it preserved priceless world heritage.
An unlikely preserver of the city. Amazing. So the stage was set, morning of August 25th. The liberation starts gaining momentum quickly.
Yeah, Leclerc resumed his attack, and by 10 a.m., the French 2nd Armored Division was properly in the city. They were systematically reducing German strongpoints, taking more and more prisoners.
And the resistance fighters. The police.
They played a crucial coordinated role, too, firing on enemy barricades, capturing fleeing Germans. It became this kind of two-pronged attack from the arriving Allied forces and from the emboldened populace inside.
And then the culmination, Choltitz's capture.
Yep. Early afternoon, French infantry assaulted his headquarters, took the garrison commander prisoner. They brought Choltitz to Leclerc around 3 p.m., and right there they signed a formal surrender document.
Imagine that moment.
Jen.
Imagine it. After 4 long years, the city finally breathes free. It must have been absolute jubilation. But the aftermath, as we're about to see, was far from simple.
Right. The speed with which the city finally fell once that concerted attack really got going, combined with Choltitz's pragmatic decision, that really made the difference between liberation and potentially widespread destruction. It's a testament to that combined pressure, inside and out.
So, as word of the German surrender spreads like wildfire through the city, the joy was obviously palpable, overwhelming. But it was quickly mixed with something else, wasn't it? Raw, immediate retribution.
Yeah, that's the darker side. Parisians, after years of occupation, hardship, suspicion, they took justice into their own hands. There were thousands of summary executions against suspected collaborators, people accused of working with the Germans.
A really dark, complex underside to all the jubilation, driven by years of just pent-up anger and betrayal, I suppose.
Absolutely. And on the military side, the operation resulted in about 15,000 German prisoners of war captured just in Paris, another 4,200 or so killed or wounded. But that process of retribution and reconciliation, that would go on for years. It wasn't over in a day.
No, of course not. And in the midst of all this chaos and celebration, General de Gaulle makes this remarkably bold political move. Late afternoon, August 25th, he enters the city. And he famously declares Paris liberated by the French. What's really striking is how he barely mentioned the Allied forces. You know, the Americans, the British, who had lost, what, 50,000 troops since D-Day just getting there?
It was a masterstroke, politically speaking. It cemented his hold on the political leadership of France. It ensured that the French people saw the liberation, first and foremost, as their victory, reclaiming their capital themselves.
Hugely important for national pride for the future.
Immensely. Meanwhile, though, the fighting wasn't completely over in the streets. GIs, French troops, resistance fighters, they were still hunting down remaining snipers, dealing with holdout defenders around the city. Security was still a real concern despite the formal surrender.
Right. And despite de Gaulle's, let's say, strategic omission of the American contribution in his speech, he still turned around and asked Eisenhower for 2 U.S. divisions to stay in Paris to provide security.
He did, but Eisenhower refused, and for good reasons, really. First, he was in no position to hold back such a large force. Combat operations were still raging east of the city. Germany wasn't defeated yet. And second, and this was probably crucial for Eisenhower, he was not going to place American troops under French command. That was a non-starter.
Okay, so no U.S. divisions staying behind? But there was a compromise, wasn't there?
Yes, and it was quite clever. Eisenhower agreed to divert the U.S. 28th Infantry Division through Paris, on their way to the front lines. This allowed the American troops to make a really powerful show of force. They took part in the big victory parade on August 29th. It was a way to satisfy both the symbolic need for an American presence and the military necessity of keeping troops moving towards the fight.
Smart. A grand spectacle, that parade. A moment of pure celebration. But as you said, with the war still waiting to the east, it was a fleeting moment, wasn't it?
Very fleeting.
So what a complex ending to such a monumental event. You've got the soaring joy right alongside brutal citizen justice, de Gaulle's incredibly shrewd political maneuvering, and then Eisenhower's clever compromise. It just really shows how victory is never just one single thing, is it? It's always this rich tapestry of competing interests, stark realities, human choices.
Absolutely. And if we look at the broader implications, it powerfully illustrates how liberation often just opens entirely new chapters. Chapters of political consolidation, like with de Gaulle, chapters of social reckoning, dealing with collaboration and resistance. The symbolic victory was immediate, yes, and profound. But the actual work of nation building and coming to terms with the deep, deep wounds of occupation, that was only just beginning.
So as you, our listener, reflect on the liberation of Paris, this moment we often see as just a singular, uncomplicated triumph. Maybe consider how it was, in fact, the culmination of all these competing things. Military strategies clashing, popular uprisings from within, delicate political calculations, and those profoundly individual acts of defiance, like the resistance and pragmatism, like Choltitz's decision. What does that multifaceted reality tell us about how we understand other moments of profound change in history? And what about the often simplified stories we tend to tell ourselves about them? Something to think about.